Hello.
Hi guys.
Hello, welcome to the Euthanasia 101 Art of a Beautiful Experience. We're really excited for you to be here tonight. My name is Dr. Courtney Prue.
And I am Dr. Laura McGuffey.
I am the founder and head veterinarian of Rest Your Paws, and we're an at-home palliative care and end-of-life service for pets across Australia.
And I look after the team in Victoria. So I'm the lead vet for Rest Your Paws in Victoria. I know a lot of you guys attending tonight are from Melbourne, and yeah, thank you. We're really excited to present, and it's great to see so many familiar names in amongst the attendees.
Yeah, I've had a little look through and I recognize quite a few people. So it's a very big compliment to us that you've taken the time to learn a little bit more about euthanasia. And our goals for tonight are to have you walk away more empowered to be part of a euthanasia, feel more confident about what to say, how to make people feel comfortable in your presence, and learn some new tips and tricks about the procedure itself so that you can go back to your clinic and make some really positive suggestions on how this could be a better experience for pets and their owners, and then ultimately, funnel down to the team that's working so hard to make that a beautiful experience as well. And it can be incredibly rewarding. I think one of our favorite parts of the job, we hear every day from families, I can't believe that you only do euthanasia. That must be the hardest job in the world. And I think
literally every appointment we are told that. But we love what we do. And that's a big part of why we do lunch and learns, why we do webinars, because we want to give back some of that positivity and share a bit of, why we love our job, and hopefully get you guys more confident and empowered to, I guess, enjoy and find fulfillment in the end of life care space.
Yeah, it gives us great joy to see people walk away from these sessions or lunch and learns feeling empowered and inspired to do things differently and be more confident. So yeah, we're really excited to share some of the things we've learned over the last 6 years. We've been doing this for 6 years now, and we've helped thousands of families. And over that time, we've learned a lot about what our families really need from us and how we can make very small changes to have a really big impact on the overall experience.
Cool.
Yeah.
Should we dive in?
Yes.
Let's do it.
Cheers.
Cheers. We weren't joking. This is a wine and webinar. We're ready to go.
Yes. Euthanasia is not an easy subject. So having a big glass of wine, something delicious in your hand, I hope will make this a little bit more fun for all of us. And we look forward to having this discussion, and we hope that you learn a lot. Cheers, Laura.
Cheers. Cool. All right, just a little bit of housekeeping. Up in the top right, there is a little questions box. So please, as we move through this presentation, feel free to ask us some questions. We are going to be getting to the end of the presentation, and then we will go through these questions and hopefully cover everything. They will be anonymous. We will not be naming and shaming anyone, so no question is going to be too silly. So please go ahead and ask us at the end. The other thing is that we will be popping up some polls as we go through. So just to get a little bit of information about who's watching tonight, but also just have a little bit of fun and make this a bit more interactive as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
So the very first poll, the most important topic on the agenda for tonight is, what is everyone drinking?
Yeah. we have semi-decent white wine.
Yes. Yeah. We're drinking, no, it's rosé actually. So are you a wine drinker, a beer or cider drinker, or spirits?
I mean, I'm usually a gin girl, but
Okay. Yeah. I'm surprised with how many hardcore spirit drinkers there are in the house tonight, but I'm very impressed.
Very good.
Awesome. Okay.
Translate entire websites in one tap. Get Chrome with Google Translate built in.
Is too much water bad for you?
People are told you got to drink a lot of water. There's no human studies that show that that's a good idea. Water dilutes out our electrolytes like sodium and chloride. And sodium and chloride are essential for muscles to actually contract. In fact, one of the top reasons marathon runners collapse isn't dehydration. It's drinking too much water without electrolytes. So, on the day-to-day, just drink enough water to not be thirsty. Number 2, coffee and tea dehydrate you. This is also a myth. Their water content will keep you hydrated, and they can absolutely count towards your daily intake. Number 3,
this idea that warm water will help you burn calories simply isn't true. It's exactly the opposite. It turns out that drinking something cold will actually make you burn more calories. You want the thermogenic effect of cold water,
because there's evidence that it burns fat. A lot of people are surprised that most of our weight loss or gain is actually controlled by the bugs that live in our gut. And we now know from both animal studies and human studies that there are lean bacteria and there are obesogenic bacteria. One of the tricks is to give lean bacteria what they want to eat.
Avocados are really one of the best foods that you can eat. They're almost pure fat and fiber, and it's fiber that your gut buddies love. Tomatoes. Now, remember, tomatoes are not a vegetable. They are a fruit. And the scary thing about tomatoes is that the peel and the seeds have lectins. In fact, fairly nasty lectins. So if you have issues with joint pain, arthritis, this is not your friend.
People know that there's something wrong. They're eating healthier than ever, and yet they're sicker than ever.
And do you think it's stoppable through diet?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. It all comes down to this key aspect of your biology, and most doctors have no idea about it. Instead of following the blanket advice doctors give to everybody, you need to figure out which gut type you are and start from there. That's when you can start to notice some big changes in your health. If you feel sluggish, bloated, or gassy after eating, if you've struggled with consistent weight gain, or if you feel completely drained of energy even first thing in the morning, there's a very good chance you'll fall into one of the 3 major gut types. Finding out your gut type is the first step to getting your bloating, weight gain, or low energy under control. And I've included a link to a simple quiz you can take to learn yours. It's only a few easy questions. It'll take you less than a minute to finish, and at the end, you'll receive custom-tailored information about your gut type. This information is completely free. You don't even have to enter your email to unlock it. The best part is you can take what you learn and put it to use today. So go ahead and click on the link below to take the gut type quiz and discover health tips that work for you.
I guess that leads us quite conveniently into our Dan Murphy's gift card. So we did ask the lovely Pixie. Pixie is featured there in the bottom left. So she actually is currently being rescued through Maggie's Rescue. So she'll be up for adoption very soon. And we got her to pick our winners for us. So we did a little kind of food puzzle for her, and then she kind of ran out and selected the first 3 bickies, and then we attached those with names. So our winners are featured here. So we have Christina, Peter, and Weijie, and we will be getting in contact with you guys by email and letting you know how to claim your fabulous prize.
Yes, so thank you for joining us, guys. You were in the top 100, so you went into the draw to win the gift card. Yeah, so let's get started. So what we're going to cover tonight are a few main concepts of the basics of euthanasia. So in order to do that, we're going to jump into really what is it that pet owners need to consider that their pet had a good death. So how would they, in their own words and through their eyes, define a good death for their pet? And that's super important, because if we can understand how they see a good death to be and how they perceive it to be peaceful and gentle for their pet, then it helps us to really know what our clients need from us in order to perceive that their pet had that gentle ending. And it helps us to align with them to give them what they need. What we'll do then is we'll move on to looking at what are some of the smaller changes that we can make in the everyday procedure that we do in hospital, and how can we make little tweaks to the way in which we orchestrate that procedure for our families and for our pets to make sure that we're giving them that experience that they want and have those big benefits for the pet and the pet owners. Yeah.
We want this to be inclusive. We know we have students here tonight. We have nurses, we have receptionists, we have vets, so and people from industry as well. So we want everyone to be able to take something away from this, because we firmly believe that everyone has a role in enhancing this experience within the clinic.
Yeah, our nurses on our team play one of the biggest roles in supporting pet caregivers with emotional support and resources and professional guidance and help with decision making. And we know that that's the same in a clinic environment as well. And so, yeah, we really want to show nurses and receptionists how they can contribute to the overall experience and be part of the bigger picture. So we're very excited to jump in and help you navigate some of these difficult situations and scenarios with more confidence.
Cool. I guess we did want to share this quote, and we hope that you kind of keep it in the back of your mind as we move throughout this presentation. We are really kind of talking about, what makes a good euthanasia, so what makes a good death experience. And I think this is a quote that really resonated with you, that you found.
Yeah, so when we kind of look at us as humans and we imagine, for the person we loved most in the world, how would we envision at the time that we had to say goodbye? How would we envision their death to be, so that we could look back and think that was the most peaceful and gentle experience possible? And really, we should be extrapolating that to our animal, our animals as well, because in most families, they're considered part of the family. And so this is Jessica Pierce, and her quote, really nicely sums up what a good death should look like and how we would envision that to be. So a good death is one that is free of any unnecessary pain, unnecessary suffering, and fear and anxiety. And it takes place in the presence of compassionate witnesses, and the process itself is really peaceful.
Yeah, I personally really like the use of compassionate witness. So I guess, yes, we're thinking of the families being there as compassionate witness, but that's really, I think, the role that we see ourselves as taking when we are present with families. We see our role as being a witness to not only that pet's peaceful passing, paying tribute to their life, but I think we also see ourselves as being a compassionate witness to people's grief. And when you kind of accept that role for yourself, it makes it a lot more comfortable to sit with people in their sadness as well.
Yeah. And I think one of the big things we want you to do through this presentation is just always remember this quote in the back of your mind. And when you're looking at these new ways of approaching euthanasia and how your current practices are in your clinic, just sit back for a moment and sort of make sure that the patients in your care and the families that are coming in for this procedure, that you are doing everything you can to remove any unnecessary fear, anxiety, or discomfort for that pet, and that it is, you're creating that place with compassionate witnesses and that support around them. Yeah. So in general, it's really good to take a step back and just say, why is death and euthanasia and end of life care, why do we find that so difficult as an industry? And you probably find this quite alarming, but the statistics show that we don't really get a lot of training, both in vet school and through our nursing studies, to set us up for success in this area. Approximately 10% of students never even see a euthanasia before graduating from vet school, and that number is even lower for nursing. Approximately 1/3 of students don't receive any formal training in euthanasia whatsoever throughout their entire vet degree. And those that do will only receive a few hours of training across their entire degree. And then you start on day one having to have that as a competency and be ready to just jump straight into those appointments without having any real support or training prior to that. 75 to 85% of vets graduate without having ever even administered pentobarbital to an animal. So again, they're having to do that for the very first time in front of families without ever having done it themselves. And we all know taking a life is something that, you may become desensitized to over time, but the first few times that you are involved in a euthanasia, it can be really hard. And most of us are coming into this for the first time on day one, doing it, with people watching. So it's very scary. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
like another really scary statistics is that, around 50% of our board complaints are in relation to euthanasia. And I would say that a vast majority of those aren't necessarily because anything's gone technically wrong. It's I think because client expectations haven't been met. And as we move through this presentation, I think the point we're trying to get across is that we often don't actually establish what client expectations are first. So how on earth can we meet them? We also wanted to note here that I think as we've developed in this space, we've come to realize that we don't do this well as an industry, but we also don't do this well as a society. I think a lot of us are very uncomfortable around grief and around death, and that's not so much because of that we are in this industry. It's because we're human beings, and it's not something that we are very comfortable discussing. So that's another thing that we're trying to shake. That's why we're doing this webinar tonight, because we do think that the more we talk about it, the more comfortable we become, the better we can do it, and the greater we can improve this space.
Yeah. And the more satisfaction you get as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. So our next poll, just to make sure everyone's still with us, and related to the last slide, is how much education did you receive during your euthanasia? How much education did you receive on euthanasia during your training or your studies, both as a vet, as a nurse, receptionist? How much education did you get? Just be really interested to see if it's a similar to what the statistics show.
Because these stats are pretty similar worldwide. This is not just a lack of training in Australia. It kind of, that trend flows through into New Zealand, into North America, into America. Although Courtney, you had a bit more training certainly than what I did coming from Canada.
Yeah. I think North America is a few years ahead, and what's really exciting is that Laura and I have actually started implementing new training programs for the DVM school in Melbourne, and we're in talks with Adelaide to revamp and redevelop the euthanasia end-of-life care protocol. So
it's just super exciting.
We're working our way through this.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what we're seeing is very similar to the statistics. Yeah, not surprising.
Cool. So we will keep moving forward, just because we got a lot to cover.
Yeah. Let's jump right into the.
Let's do it. We love an acronym.
The beef and bones. Yeah. So over the last 6 years, we have had the privilege of helping thousands of pet owners through the end of life journey, from the moment that pet has been diagnosed with a terminal illness through to the final goodbye. And we've learned so much about what our families really need from us in order to walk away from that experience. And the reason we know is because they look us in the eye afterwards and they say, I don't know what I would have done without you. You have helped me so much. And they didn't necessarily know exactly what we did, but they know that what we did was so impactful. And so what we've been doing is trying to, make this easier to teach. And so we've made this acronym called PATS. And this is a very simple way for you to kind of remember all of the key elements that our pet owners need from us during a euthanasia procedure, whether it's in the home or whether it's in the clinic. Keep these PATS in mind as you're going through your appointments. And if you can incorporate even the majority of these in every appointment, you will blow your family's mind. They will come out of it so grateful and so happy, and you will never look back. I can promise you that.
It's nice to show up and have the answers that they didn't know that they needed. And we should also point out a lot of, whilst we have the experience and we know that people need this because they've proven it to us time and time again, we've also had some fantastic studies recently come out of the States where they've surveyed sort of over 1,500 owners and asked them what made a difference in your euthanasia experience, what made it a good death experience. And those surveys have collaborated and sort of reinforced what we already knew through experience. So that's what's led us to PATS. And we'll jump right into the first one, which is preparation and pre-planning.
Yeah. So this is a huge area for us to make a massive difference in the for our pet owners specifically. No, not so much for the animals, but this is like how we can provide comprehensive support for them to help them through that decision-making process, and then also preparing them for what to expect on the day, and ultimately trying to remove that fear of the unknown that so many of our pet owners struggle with. So pre-planning and preparing our families should be something that we think about from the moment that that terminal diagnosis has been made, and have multiple touch points with that family throughout their palliative care journey, and then also considering doing a pre-planning appointment, or a sort of preparing them for euthanasia prior to the day where possible. And even if you're not able to do a separate appointment to plan for euthanasia, we can incorporate some of these things that we'll talk about soon into the actual euthanasia appointment itself, to make sure that they're really comfortable before you proceed to that next part.
Yeah, I think we certainly underappreciated, and I certainly did when I first started with Rest Your Paws, how much of a difference things like pain scoring tools and quality of life assessments actually make to owners. And time again, when I first started, I would have owners say to me, "Oh, I went on your website, I did the pain scoring tool. Like, it really helped. It actually helped me in picking up the phone and making the call today, because I guess because they had tools to work with." And never forget what a gift that is to make this awful decision actually seem more objective to owners. You know, we don't want them thinking, "You'll know when it's time." That is not a weight that any owner and pet parent wants on their shoulders. What they want is to feel like they have permission to go ahead with the euthanasia. And so we need to give them that permission in sometimes in facts, in facts of how their pet is feeling, and boxes to tick, so that they know they're doing the right thing.
Empower our pet owners to be able to make the best decision that they can at the best time that they can, through knowledge and support. And one thing that we have made, and you can see it on the slide here, is, over the years, and you probably have had pet owners ask you all the questions that are inside of this book, but we've compiled all the things that we get asked throughout a patient's end of life journey, and we've created a beautiful book that we share with clinics all across the country, to be able to support their vets and their nurses and their families, to be able to help with that communication, because we know in a busy clinic, vets and nurses are running off their feet. They don't have time to have a 1-hour conversation preparing them for every possible scenario, and everything to look out for, and what is quality of life, and how to evaluate physical well-being, emotional well-being, social well-being. We get asked about children, and should they be present, and how do I talk to them about death, and should my other pet be there? So this book has everything that they are going to need to help them through that process, empowering them to be able to make that decision a day early rather than a day late. And one thing you'll notice if you start using the book with your families is that people will be coming in for euthanasia far sooner in the course of their pet's disease, before it reaches that point where they're suffering, which actually has a really impactful
big positive for us.
Not seeing so many pets suffering and feeling like we helped people make the decision before it got to that point.
And I mean, that it's the beauty of printed and digital resources. You can send it to them, even if they book that euthanasia in for tomorrow. You can at least sort of send them the PDF, give them the chance to go over things at home, so they actually feel prepared for the unknown. And make it a fantastic experience. Even if it's a day of preparation, it has a significant difference in how positively owners view the euthanasia itself.
The other thing that we have been asked quite a lot of times by the industry and vets and nurses is actually how do we talk people through a euthanasia? What are some communication tips and tricks that we use in our appointments that are really effective in making sure that we move slowly, we're very comprehensive, while providing compassion and taking them on that journey without overwhelming them? So the very first thing, when you're in the euthanasia appointment itself, we're going to give you our 6 things that we try to focus on to make that a better experience for them. So the first thing that we do is we walk into the exam room and, we have this, if we're really busy, sometimes we just want to, jump in and start explaining the procedure and saying, okay, this is what to expect. Have you been through it before? I'm going to talk you through it. But what we should be doing is just taking a step back and trying to make the families feel calm and comfortable, and they need to trust us. So we need to spend some time developing a rapport, asking open-ended questions, getting to know a little bit about their pet, what they've been going through, what has the family been going through in caring for a terminally ill pet, and using that information to then be able to do a little quality of life assessment and reassure them that their quality of life is no longer adequate based on everything that you're saying. Euthanasia is an appropriate decision to make, and reassure them that they're in good hands. This is the kindest thing to be doing. And we want to take some time also to just love on that pet, like love the animal, find that beauty in that animal in the eyes that they see their pet in, so that you can find that common ground and create trust.
That's it. I mean, that stat that I mentioned before, with 50% of board complaints coming, back from euthanasia, you want to build rapport because you want to build trust. Because if things don't technically go the way you wanted them to, you want that family to walk away still knowing that your intent was good, your intent was positive, and you cared and you wanted to provide your best. And that goes a long way. That feeling, people won't remember what you told them. They will remember how you made them feel. So that rapport is so important, just to take control over the situation and actually make it a positive experience.
Yeah, absolutely. The next thing that's actually really helpful as well in developing a rapport and throughout these little mini quality of life chats at the beginning is to just summarize and paraphrase. It's a really simple communication technique. You can do it as a nurse on the phone when you're, booking the euthanasia appointment. We still want to be finding out what's been going on with the pet, and just repeating exactly what they say. They said. So this is, you're telling me this and this. He can't get up. He's no longer eating or drinking, and he's collapsed. Do I have that right? And they say, yep, I do. Okay, great. Now, and then you can summarize and move on from there. So it really shows them that you're listening and that you care. Very small little thing, but helps them.
It does, yeah. And that kind of plays into chunking and checking as well. So you want to be delivering a small amount of information and then seeing how it's resonated with them. Never forget or underappreciate how anxious these families and these owners are when they come into clinic. They're probably not picking up a lot of what you're saying. And this goes for, quality of life assessments or terminal diagnoses as well. You want to give a little bit of information and make sure they're actually taking it on board, because they're anxious. They're not actually in a mental state to be able to take on a lot of information all at once. So chunking and checking can really help to make sure that you get your message across and they do understand what's going on. And then I guess that leads into past experiences as well.
And what we have told all of our vets to do, and the very first time you do it, you might think, oh my gosh, I'm opening up a can of worms, but it's such a nice thing to do before proceeding with the euthanasia appointment. So we ask every family, have you ever had to put a pet to sleep before? You might know these families and you might know that they have had to put a pet to sleep before, but in situations where you don't know them very well, or they're a new client, saying, is this something that you've been through, or has everyone in the room been through this before? And it gives them the opportunity to tell you if it's their first time, or if they've been through it 10 times already. Or maybe, and what you'll hear more often than not when we ask this question is that they haven't had an experience that has sat well with them. And they've had an experience in the past that, either from a technical aspect, or they felt like it was too clinical, or they didn't have the emotional support, or the appointment wasn't long enough, or their pet had some post-death reactions that have really traumatized them, and they're always still thinking about it. It just gives them the time to open up about their fears or concerns, or that sort of baggage that they're holding on to from the last appointment, and bring it forward. And it gives you an opportunity to just take a moment to reassure them and say, you know what? I can explain exactly what happened in that, put their mind at ease, and then reassure them that this is going to be very different, and that you're going to be taking care of him, and your pet's comfort is at the forefront of everything I'm going to be doing. It's really, really important before you jump into any euthanasia.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess keep in mind, we are all performing euthanasia a little bit differently. So especially if they do say, yes, I've been through this plenty of times before, I think it's definitely still worth exploring how that experience was and taking the time to explain to them what you're going to be doing. Because again, you don't want to kind of not meet their expectations. If how you euthanize that pet is very different to how it was euthanized, previous pets were, then you're potentially going to upset them quite a lot, or leave them with a lot of questions about why was the last euthanasia performed in that way.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, we get that a lot.
And then signposting and asking permission. Again, you've got anxious owners, and these are good ways to make sure that they're actually picking up on what you're putting down. They know sort of how the conversation is drifting. They know what to expect. Again, you're taking away fear of the unknown, and you're also asking permission just so that you can sort of give them a little bit of control back in the conversation in a situation that is otherwise very out of their control.
Yeah. So what we find also is really helpful for nurses as well as for vets and for receptionists is just feeling really confident in how you explain the euthanasia procedure itself, and what are the best words to use that are going to help you to create a really calm owner, one that feels like comfortable with the procedure itself. So interestingly enough, the words that we have been ingrained in us from the moment we graduate, and the words they were probably using 20 or 30 years ago, we're still using those same words today. And so what we have tried to do at Rest Your Paws is sort of really think about each and every word that we're using and say, is there something that we could say that would sound slightly nicer or more gentle? So we have moved away from saying things like sedative. We don't use any medical jargon or technical terminology. We don't want to use IV catheter. We don't want to say injection or needle. And the big one that surprises most people is that we actually don't say overdose of an anesthetic.
Yeah, which again isn't something that you would consider, I don't think you'd even think twice about it until you actually ask yourself, what does death by an overdose actually make you as a human envision? And that is what the general public is kind of thinking of when we say, then we're going to give him an overdose of anesthetic. It doesn't sound nice, as opposed to the final medication that I'm going to give him is something nice and gentle. It's nothing nasty. It's actually an anesthetic itself. And so all we're going to do is allow his little mind to drift off nice and slowly, and then his little body will slow down and wind down after that. So again, we're just taking away the clinicalness of it, because this is a pet's farewell. It's not just an appointment. So we want to tailor it to that and actually make it an experience. And we've got the freedom to be fluffy and to be nice and to be compassionate during this experience.
Yeah. And a really good take home when you're sort of thinking about how to reword and say things is really envision changing from how we typically explain the procedure to what is, like we usually describe what is happening to the pet, and what are we as the vet professional going to do to your animal to go from a transition to being awake to death. So we typically would say, we're going to take him to the back. We're going to then put in an IV line, and then we'll bring him back in. Then we'll administer a sedative. And then once he's asleep, we'll administer an overdose of an anesthetic, and then he'll pass away very quickly from there. That is really different on the contrast to how we would describe the process. And what we do is, instead of describing what we're going to do to the animal, we describe how the animal is going to feel when we do those things, but not necessarily focusing on what we're doing. So we'll say, the very first thing that we're going to do is give Fluffy a medication that goes just under his skin. And that medication is going to make him feel really relaxed. And over about 5 to 10 minutes, he'll start to feel sleepy, and he'll just want to put his little head down on your lap, and he's going to fall asleep with you holding him. Once he's fast asleep, we're just going to shave a little spot on his back leg and put in a little line. He won't even feel it at all. He'll be fast asleep. And as soon as you're ready and you've had enough time to say goodbye, we'll just give that final medication very slowly through the line. It's just a gentle anesthetic, and his little body is just going to go into a deeper and deeper sleep. his heart will slow down and his breathing will slow down, and he'll just pass in his sleep, and he'll be so comfortable through the whole procedure. Yeah. So
I love your client voice.
My client voice. Yeah, there it is. But imagine you're the owner in those two different scenarios. What I've done when I've talked about the feelings is I've prevented their own imagination from thinking, oh, how is he going to feel when you give that needle? How is he going to feel when you give a catheter? He hates needles. He's going to be so uncomfortable. And so what we don't realize is when we talk about the two, they start imagining, and we can't control where their thoughts go. Instead, by focusing on how they feel, we're controlling that thought process and not allowing the owners to think of the worst case scenario.
Yeah, you are controlling the narrative.
Yeah. So this is my favorite. I think what Laura and I have both appreciated since, dedicating our careers to end-of-life care is just how much reassurance our families need from us. When I was a vet in general practice, I think I just thought if they've booked the euthanasia, then they're probably ready. Like they've had the time to think about it and they know it's the right thing. And there may be like a little bit of iffy, but I used to just sort of go through the motions and provide the death. I didn't realize how much uncertainty was in their mind. So our advice to you is to, when you think you've provided enough reassurance, then you need to provide more reassurance. And after that, you need to provide more reassurance. Try to provide reassurance from the moment they walk into the hospital through to going into a room, throughout the procedure itself, and then afterwards.
Yeah. And this is why everyone needs to be involved, right? It can't just be all on the nurse's shoulders or all on the reception team or all on the vet. I think there are so many opportunities, from when they book the appointment to when they come back and pick up the ashes. You have so many, so much space to be able to let them know that they did make the right decision, that we made the right decision as a team for them. And I think some pretty alarming stats just to really reinforce what we're saying. Like around about 50% of people following their euthanasia have doubt and have regret over the actual euthanasia in terms of thinking it may not have been the best time. There are also, I think it's something like 16% of owners feel like they've killed their pet following euthanasia, which
they feel like a murderer.
They live with that for the rest of their lives, which is awful because we often walk away thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that animal is in a better place now. And yet they're feeling like they've killed their pet.
Yeah. So just taking that few minutes to reassure them throughout the process, in every aspect that you can.
Cold Power. Live on.
Yeah.
And how you go about that reassurance, just two main things. We are doing the right thing. It's so much nicer to remind them that this is a decision that they are making with you and that you are endorsing and you are promoting. It takes a lot of onus off of their shoulders, and it removes a lot of that burden of having to be their parent and making the decision to put them to sleep. So definitely kind of using the language of we are making the right decision rather than you are. And the other thing is putting a positive spin on it rather than, oh, this is the best thing for him. He's not suffering anymore. You want to say he feels so comfortable right now. He is floating on cloud nine. He's had that sedation. He feels fantastic. And, I say when I put them to sleep, like, I hope he's feeling young again. I hope he can do all the things he used to do. So try and put a positive on it rather than a negative.
Yeah. So number 2 in what we have learned that pet owners really want and need from us through this procedure is they really want the procedure itself to be as stress-free, anxiety-free, and pain-free as possible. It's probably one of their most biggest fears coming into a euthanasia is that their pet is going to be uncomfortable, either from an emotional perspective or physical perspective. So all the things we can do to make sure that that doesn't happen, super important.
Yeah. And I guess, I think we're all pretty aware that owners want adequate time and privacy. I think just making sure that that time in privacy is good quality time. And as we're about to move through, we're going to talk about sort of the other components of what's important during a euthanasia. And I think both of them really contribute to allowing you to actually get good quality time rather than sitting in a room with a stressed pet.
Yeah, the location of where the euthanasia happens is in your control in a vet clinic, and certainly, in the home setting, that's a really nice environment. But in a clinic setting, there's a lot you can do to try to make it feel a little bit more comfortable and relaxed and like home. Get some really comfortable beds for the pet to fall asleep in once that sedation has been given, so they're not just falling asleep on an exam room table or falling dead on a towel on the floor, like with nothing supporting their head and their eyes wide open. If you can try to replicate what sleep looks like by providing bedding, comfy little pillow, a little blanket, and making sure that the family has comfortable seating and maybe a door that allows them to exit directly out rather than having to come back to the front door to pay their bill. Yeah. And then respectful body handling.
Yeah, it's sad that we still hear so many people kind of tell us that they've had the experience of having to help the vet or the nurse put their pet into a bag. I think that is, it makes my skin crawl. We have the ability to make sure that pet is handled respectfully. They pass away in a fluffy little bed. That is the owner's last vision of their pet. Or if they are taking home for home burial, swaddle that pet, have them kind of wrapped up respectfully so that they have less kind of trauma to go through when they arrive home and have to bury them. And anytime you're handling that pet when they've passed, what I do is I almost pretend like they're asleep and I'm trying to not wake them up, which means anytime you're touching or handling that pet when the owners are present, gentle and slow, and it is so much less jarring for the family, and also really kind of promotes trust. They can see that you care and that you are being respectful and gentle even when their pet's no longer there anymore.
So now we're going to jump into the procedure itself. And one of the most important aspects within the actual euthanasia procedure is that we always have in the back of our mind to leave the human-animal bond intact. As much as you can. So we want to facilitate the ability to stay close and remain together and to have that connection, because those final 15 minutes or 30 minutes that pet parent has the animal in their life, it's precious. And we don't want to do anything to disrupt that bond.
And of course, there are going to be people and families that don't want to be present at their pet's euthanasia. That is absolutely okay. And we don't want to judge those families, because generally the decision to not be there comes from a place of hurt. I do sort of say that with the caveat of, I think sometimes we can explore the reason of why those owners don't want to be there, often because they've had a poor experience in the past. And when we take the time to explain to them why what we're going to do is going to be different and how it's going to be better, often we have a lot of owners that do choose to stay and want to be there for the euthanasia, which for me, there is nothing more rewarding than when an owner says to me when I first arrive, I don't think I'm going to be here when you put him to sleep. I'll probably go into another room. And then we move through it gently and slowly, and they stay for the whole time. And they've looked at me afterwards and they're like, I'm so glad I stayed. That was so peaceful.
Really nice. It often comes from a place of fear or a bad experience in the past. And as part of leaving the human-animal bond intact, the most important thing that we should be trying to do in that entire experience or procedure is keeping the pet with the pet owner the entire time. And I know that it's common practice in many clinics across Australia and around the world, because of just being able to kind of keep in control of the situation the entire time, is to as soon as that family walks through the door, the first thing we do in the waiting room is we tend to just say, I'm just going to take Fluffy to the back and put in an IV line, and we'll meet you back in the exam room and we'll bring him back in. That to a pet owner and has been said to us over and over and over as one of the hardest things that had happened to them in a previous euthanasia experience. And I didn't understand that, because that was what I did every single time. And I was like, oh, but we're just taking him to the back. But they're thinking, yeah, but you're doing something awful. He's going to be scared. And one family explained to me their experience of the reason why it was so traumatic is that they were actually the entire way that they were driving to the car. So from they had the appointment at 3 o'clock and they were driving, and they said to their pet the entire time, like, we just want to protect you. I'm going to protect you. I'm not going to let anything bad happen to you. And they were feeling so guilty, and they were saying, like, I promise I'm going to be here with you the entire time. And they walk through the door, and the very first thing we do is we take them away. So just don't underestimate how important it is for that family to remain close and to feel like they're doing everything they can to make that experience better for their pet. Yeah. So the next thing we're going to get on to that I think makes the biggest difference in terms of providing an experience that's in line with what our families want is to provide sedation and, providing a beautiful sleep before the end. Yeah. It's now considered best practice in Australia to provide sedation prior to euthanasia. In America, that is the gold standard, and it's been changed in their guidelines, and we're hoping to see the same thing in Australia coming soon.
Yeah, I think in order to provide all of this love to, the pet, to the owners, you want a comfortable, not anxious, not trying to get out of the room, not in pain animal in front of you. It's hard to concentrate on the family. It's hard to give love to anyone else if you can see a pet that is not doing well in front of you. So providing sedation means that that pet's comfortable and they are still, and they're not going to be struggling to, get away while you try and place that IV line. So it really does take away a lot of the stress and the fear in the pet. It takes away a lot of the stress and the fear in the family. It allows you to keep the pet and the owner together the whole time. It drops your anxiety immensely, both as the nurse and the vet, to have a patient that's calm in front of you. This isn't just for the pet and for the owner. This is to not have to fight with that pet at their last moments of life to place an IV line. Like that sucks. And to instead be dealing with a pet that's already sedated, is already feeling great, no longer in pain, they're having a snooze, not even noticing you placing that IV line is fantastic.
Yeah. And ultimately we want to be moving towards sedating them with the family there before an IV line is placed, allowing them to fall asleep before we do anything that could be uncomfortable for the pet, which is putting in an IV catheter. So yeah, this is a really big topic, the sleep before the end, and there's a lot to learn to feel really confident in sedation protocols and doses and time to effect and how to orchestrate all of this in front of the families. It is an incredible thing to change in your practice, and you will see the benefits right away. But I appreciate a lot of vets and nurses are sort of nervous to change the routine of
it's daunting.
something they've been doing for their whole career.
Yeah.
So we are going to be offering a lot more continuing education coming up on sedation protocols, and we've made these awesome guides which we give out to all vet clinics around Australia as well, which show exact doses and drugs and combinations to use to help you to succeed in this area and to inspire you to do this differently and feel confident. So get in touch with us. If you don't have the sedation guide, we'd be more than happy to send it to you, or even come into your clinic and do a lunch and learn. Let us know. So just to do a very quick summary of today's presentation that we've got so far, so that you can take all of the PATs and implement it into your practice and give you like a clear flow of how this could work for your clinic. We want to take every family when they arrive at the hospital, take them into a private room, keeping their pet and keeping the pet and the owner together the entire time. Then we want to have a moment to develop a rapport, discuss quality of life, and reassure them that they're really doing the right thing at the right time.
Always reassure.
Yeah, reassure. Find out if they've ever been through it before, and just make sure that they're comfortable with what's going to happen today and put their mind at ease. Signpost to explain the procedure and a really nice overview, not too much detail at the beginning, and then you can always chunk and check and give them smaller and bits of more information throughout.
Yeah.
We then want to provide sedation with the family present, subcutaneous if possible, allow the animal to fall asleep in the owner's arms or right next to them. Then we place an IV catheter in front of the family. I know it's daunting, but it's really not that bad.
It's a lot easier when they're sedated. They're not going to be pulling away from
There's
you.
no kicking, I promise.
No cats trying to scratch your face off. They're asleep, okay?
Yeah. We want to give the family time, make sure we honor that bond, that life, let them share some stories, and then be really respectful to their pet after they've passed, just as they were in life, and leave them with that memory. Yeah. So the very last thing that we have found and what studies have backed up is actually how much it improves the owner's perception of a good death if they were able to say goodbye at home. We've in this study, it showed that it was almost double, whether they came out of their euthanasia experience feeling like it was a really good death, and they said, yeah, that was a really nice euthanasia. They're twice as likely to if it was done at home. And I think for obvious reasons, they're in the privacy of their own home, surrounded by loved ones. They know that's where their pet's most comfortable, familiar smells, and I think they feel comfortable grieving as well.
It's a lot easier to connect to owners in the home and to have them feel comfortable with you being present around their grief when you're in their space rather than them being in our space, I think.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is, our service, Rest Your Paws, supports vet clinics around the country. And what we really want to do is be an extension of your practice and be able to support your team in times where you aren't able to provide a home euthanasia, or some clinics just don't at all. It might just be after hours and on weekends. And there's a lot of options now in terms of being able to refer your patients for end-of-life care at home.
There are, and I think that's why it's important to do some research into who you're referring to, rather than just telling clients to jump online and have a look. I think we owe it to them to do a bit of research and to find out, who is in our area, who should we be trusting and using and referring them to, because, these are our clients, these are our patients, and we want them to have a good experience. I mean, these are just some of the, I guess, things that we think should be included in a good sort of referral service. Ideally, one that is able to provide palliative care and grief support. We do have our own grief counselor on our team, so we're very fortunate that we can provide that to owners following a pet's passing. We have a nursing team that does our triaging, and obviously having nurses on our team mean that our pets, if they need to be seen then and there to prevent suffering, then they can recognize that and they can help the owners to understand that. Likewise, if they're not a candidate for an in-home euthanasia, if it's something that has to be done then and there, we will refer them to emergency, because we don't want our pets to suffer, while we're trying to orchestrate this euthanasia at home.
Yeah, it is really important that the service that you're recommending is able to handle same-day support, because 80% of the people that reach out to us are needing an appointment that day. We know this is a hard decision, and often people do wait until it's clearly clearly the time, and it probably should have been yesterday or a few weeks earlier.
2 weeks ago.
But you need to make sure that they can get to them quickly most of the time, and that they don't just have availability in the evenings, or that animal has to wait at home without assistance. The other thing that's really important is that the service you're recommending is run by veterinarians, and even better if it's certified hospice and palliative care veterinarians, or vets that have certification as a peaceful euthanasia vet, because it means they've had that advanced training, and they're going to practice to the highest standards. There's currently no standards at all in Australia around euthanasia, and so you really want to make sure that the service that you're leaning on for support is going to provide a gold standard service,
because it reflects back on you. That service that is provided, again, it comes back to your own clinic's reputation, and you get that positivity by association. We have so many owners who say to us, I am so grateful to my GP for referring me to you. So it definitely translates back to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. So if you guys want to know more about palliative care, if you want to hear me in particular speak again, I'm actually going to be talking at Melbourne VetWorks, which we both attended last year, and we had a fantastic time. What we loved about the VetWorks is that it's all inclusive. So we have vets, nurses, students, industry professionals all together, and it's nice to be surrounded by I guess everyone. It's nice to be so inclusive because we work, in clinic all day together. It's nice to actually be attending these events together.
Yeah, and I think that was the whole point of VetWorks, is that, if the nursing teams and the vets are going together, then they're going to be able to bring everything they've learned back to the clinic and be able to make really positive changes. And that's something that's very true for euthanasia. You need everyone in the practice to be on board to change the entire way you facilitate that experience. So Laura's going to be doing 2 incredible talks.
2 lectures. So go to melbourne.vetworks.com.au and you can get your tickets. So the registration, I believe, is open now for November. And we have a last poll for tonight.
Last poll. Thank you guys for sticking it out. Cheers to all of you.
Our wines are still so full.
We have been drinking too slowly. How did you hear about the webinar tonight? We'd love to find out how you heard about our very first Euthanasia 101. Many of you know our beautiful practice manager, Danny. I think she shouted from the rooftops and told the world. So we wish we could include Danny as an option.
We could only include 5 options. We were going to have a 6th one. I heard about it from Danny, so that's in there. But here, word of mouth is good too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's so wonderful to see you all here, and it just shows like a true desire to do this as best we possibly can. And we love that you're here. We love that you're interested in making this a positive experience for your team members, for the pets and the families that you care for.
Yeah.
A
little bit of information for you guys for your CPD points. So alongside vets claiming theirs, this course is approved by the AVNAT registration scheme. So nurses will be able to claim their CPD points. You will get a certificate emailed to you after the webinar, and you just need to keep that for your records to claim your CPD. And that's it.
That's it.
We did it.
Yes. Thank you all for joining. We're delighted to answer some questions. We know we weren't able to get to everything because this was just a very quick overview of some of the things that we think would be most powerful for you. But we would love to answer some questions now.
Oh, I'm just working it out technically, bringing them up. Okay, cool. All right, so we just jump in?
Yeah.
All right, so the first question we have, so how do you protect yourself emotionally from so much euthanasia? That's a good one.
It is a good one.
I get asked this a lot, and I always have to, I guess, stop and think about how I answer it. A quote that I really like is that you can't walk through water and not expect to get wet. And so what I take away from that is I can't do such an emotionally charged role and not expect to feel it. And in fact, if I stop feeling it, I'll probably stop being in this role because I would be concerned for myself. So my answer is that I do feel it, and I do, I guess, get attached, especially to my palliative care patients. I've had a run this year of losing some pretty special patients, saying goodbye to them, I should say. And I guess I just allow myself to feel it. Like if I want to put sad music on and have a cry in the car, then I put sad music on and have a cry in the car. I'm not, I guess, afraid to kind of feel that emotion. But in saying that, I'm also very conscious of when I am feeling empathetically like cognitive about it, or if I'm feeling emotionally empathetic. So am I crawling down in that hole with someone, or am I witnessing their grief and just kind of recognizing it? So I guess what I'm trying to say is I try to not take on other people's grief. I can be there and I can recognize it, I can support it, and I guess make them feel comfortable in feeling it. It's not my grief to take on board though. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think for me, like we're in a very privileged position to be able to spend an hour with each family and to create an experience and what feels like a celebration of life, and share memories and have laughter and have tears, and then, you know, really reassure families and make sure they're comfortable. And so what I find in sort of creating more of an experience out of euthanasia for our families is that they're so grateful, and they're hugging us, and they're crying, and they're laughing, and they're, you know, saying we've changed their life. And so there are times where I feel emotionally deflated, you know, just in the sadness of what's happening in front of me. But then I can step back and think, wow, I just gave them the most incredible, beautiful, personal funeral, and it's going to change their life, their perception on death. And tomorrow, I know they're going to wake up and be able to be 10 steps ahead than they would have been if they didn't have this experience. And so I think also not having to rush through a euthanasia, I think that also plays a big part in compassion fatigue, is having to, you know, multitask and have surgeries happening in the background, and also rushing through euthanasias and not being able to give families your all. And that over time is a slow erosion of your physical and emotional well-being. And that, I think that leads to compassion fatigue more than situations where you can provide a beautiful experience and then take that time between your calls and debrief and sit with your emotions and process how you're feeling, listen to some nice music, take time for yourself, and then go into the next one. It's
that actually leads into this question, which is getting emotional about a client pet's passing unprofessional?
I think no. I cry all the time. I think, to be honest, you know, we've kind of taught in our studies to, you know, don't cry, because the owners aren't going to see that as you being professional, or never cry as much as the owners do. And that is the biggest myth. As we've sort of embarked on our palliative care training and come and spoken to professionals around the world, I think if you can let yourself feel what you need to feel in a healthy way with the families, they're going to look at you and think you're the most compassionate person. You care, and I'm so lucky to be have you as my compassionate witness. And you know, I think there's always a line that if you're, you know, bawling and more devastated and crying 10 times more than the family, then you might have to think, okay, I just need to rein it in a little bit, or just take a break and step outside. But I think opening up and being vulnerable and showing your emotions is really healthy, and something we need to allow ourselves to do to be able to do this job.
Definitely.
Yeah.
A little bit of a change of pace. Do you do training in clinics?
Yes.
Yeah,
we do. I think we've met so many of you already who are in this webinar from doing lunch and learns. And any topic that you would love to bring to your practice or have more knowledge around, whether it's sedation, whether it's how to have in-depth quality of life assessments and help families to better understand when it's time. Laura does a beautiful talk on compassion fatigue and having compassionate resilience, which nurses and vets just love. So no topic is is out of reach. We love to help teams to do this better. Yeah.
I guess, and another question that kind of has me thinking about what you've just said is should children and other pets be present for euthanasia? Those, I guess, their own topics in themselves. The short answer is yes. If we can make it a safe and a good experience for them, then I think it can be really beautiful. You know, being able to provide a good, positive, like first death experience for a child is pretty special, I think, to walk away and have those children, coping it, and the gratitude that we get from parents as well when we help them navigate children and how to kind of explain things with them. We do, in the end of life care pack book that we have available, we have some information about how to sort of tackle talking to children about euthanasia based on their age. We also have a lot of information in there about comforting other pets. What I will say is that other bonded pets do seem to cope a lot better when they are present. So at all of our in-home euthanasias, we allow other pets to be present. Even big, silly 2-year-old golden retrievers eventually kind of bring their energy down and they settle, and they know what's going on, and they're usually very well behaved for it. They usually have their little sniff and say goodbye at the end. And we rarely, if ever, get owners reaching out to us afterwards concerned about their bonded pet's behavior. I think it makes a big difference that they're there to sort of see that farewell.
Yeah, we love having children present. And I think one thing, if you are wanting to learn a little bit more about, how to have that conversation with families and move beyond, oh, well, your child best. And, if you think they should be there, great. That was usually my go-to answer, but there's so much more information we could be giving to clients. There's information about different ages and how children grieve at different ages and how much they're capable of understanding at death at different ages, which you can talk parents through. You can give them ideas on how to involve them in the appointment. And that's all written in our end-of-life care pack book. And so even if you don't know all the answers, being able to give them that resource and those tools to read back at home, and it'll help them so much.
That's it. You're not expected to have all of the answers to these questions, just like you're not expected to be grief counselors, but being able to then sort of say, like, that isn't my area of expertise, but I know it's really important. So I have some resources on it that I can send you. That's really important. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, we're getting
flagged from our marketing team telling us what to do.
So this is a great question. So taking payment is one of the most awkward parts of the process, which we all agree makes you feel terrible and completely makes you feel like you're not compassionate, and it's awful. So so one of the ways that we tackle this is by incorporating payments and discussions around payments and the ability to pay, and putting that into your pre-planning and preparing the family for euthanasia. So when the family calls to book in for a euthanasia, we actually have helped many vet clinics, make a little email template that sets out, what to expect at the appointment, gives them additional resources. And in that email that you send out to the families to confirm the booking, you can provide the aftercare services brochure as a digital copy with the prices included as an attachment to that email. And you can also let them know about the costs, provide them with a quote, and even the ability to pay by credit card before they come into the appointment. And you can word it really nicely and say, many of our clients feel that the most difficult part of this is having to pay at the time of the appointment or after their pet has passed. And so many have asked us if they would be able to pay ahead of time, and we wanted to extend that to you in case you feel that would make the whole process easier. And clients will go, oh my God, I didn't even think about that, and I would like to pay ahead of time. So giving them the option to pay before they come in is a good way to get around that.
Yeah, I think so. And look, that's not always an option. I know, like, a lot of these, euthanasia appointments are very last minute. We know that all too well. So I guess it's still just, you can still use certain language. So when you do have to go into that room for payment, acknowledge it. Like, again, the reassurance of this, I'm so sorry. This is such a hard decision to make. Like, we are going to do everything we can to keep Fluffy comfortable. Can we, I was hoping that we could just sort of walk through the payment and even the consent form now and just have that all sorted, so that we can then just turn our full attention to you and Fluffy, and we can make sure that, we're here with you every step of the way. So I guess kind of maybe try acknowledging that, like, we want to get this out of the way because we want to focus on the most important thing, which is you and Fluffy, and giving you love and support. So I think there's still ways that we can kind of adjust our language, and sometimes it's just really actually acknowledging how hard this is for the owner and empathizing with them, and then moving through the paperwork.
And appreciating that, like, the reason you're coming in to do this now is because ultimately you want them to be able to focus on their pet and have that be the best possible experience it can be. So we feel that being able to do this ahead of time will allow you to focus on your pet. So if you always change the wording so that it has their best interest at heart, then they'll appreciate that, and they'll understand that you're trying to make it easier for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have another really good question. So what are your thoughts on calling clients back for a welfare check the next day or two to see how they're coping after a euthanasia?
Yeah, and that's something that we do at Rest Your Paws. We have, we do have our grief counselor, which is very helpful that all clinics can reach out to and use our grief counselor for their own clients.
Yeah.
If you're ever feeling like it's, they're in a bad way and they need that extra emotional support, you can 100% reach out to our beautiful grief counselor, Haley Gray. She's absolutely wonderful. She's open to, across Australia. But I think it is really important for you to have that continuity of care with all of your clients. And we should always be providing some level of follow-up, whether that is a little text message that you create a few templates in your hospital, or an email. And for those that you're worried about, like particularly if it's a welfare check, we should be picking up the phone and just saying, I've been thinking about you all night. I know this is so hard for you. What you're going through is so difficult, but I just want to tell you that we are so proud of you and we did the very best thing. Again, using that inclusive language is going to help alleviate that burden of guilt that they're feeling. So we did the best thing we could for him. I'm so glad that we could be there for Fluffy yesterday. He would be so grateful for all of our care. We're so worried about you. Do you have support? We're thinking about you. What can we do to help? And have professionals that your team can then refer to if you're worried about someone. It's really important that you do have that continuity of care and that follow-up with our families.
The follow-up is good as well because it gives the owners a chance to maybe ask you something that was playing on their mind. Like, he actually kind of yelped a bit when he had that sedation. Like, do you think he was in pain when he passed away? Like, owners, again, they're in a state of anxiety, so they can have these thoughts that just kind of plague them and go round and round in their head. And for you to kind of call in and just be like, I just want to check in, like, how are you doing, Or you can even say, I don't really have the words. I know how much he meant to you, and I don't really know what to say other than I'm so sorry, and I just wanted to call and check in and see how you're doing. I think this is even more important. If you feel like the euthanasia didn't go the way you wanted it to, don't shy away from that. Like, show them that you care and call and be like, how are you doing? Like, do you have any questions? Is there anything that I can do for you?
Yeah, it's really important. And like, we have many practices that have now even, incorporated a grief counseling card or like a little brochure in with their cremation service brochure to hand them that together. Because what it does is it acknowledges right away that you understand how hard this is. And it wouldn't be an abnormal thing to reach out to a grief counselor. Actually, many of our families do reach out to a grief counselor because it helps them. And so we're including this in here, and you're normalizing it, and you're making them feel okay, for rather than waiting for them to reach out to you to say, do you know of a grief counselor? Many people will feel too embarrassed to do that. But if the card is in there, then you're saying, like, this is very normal, and we're here to support you, and we work with this lovely grief counselor and she can help. It's a really nice touch just to show them that you care. Another great question that we have all the time, is from emergency hospitals. So how do you implement all of these wonderful and best practice techniques in an emergency situation where euthanasia needs to be done straight away? So we're obviously going through, in these scenarios where you do have the gift of time, and where you can allow that gradual transition to sleep and give families time with their pet before they pass. There will be situations where you need to move quickly. And to be honest, even in a home setting, we often arrive to families' homes with their pets actively seizuring or, bleeding out, collapsed, pale gums, in respiratory distress. And we do have to move quickly, but you can still make it beautiful. And so what we do is we say, listen, Fluffy's, he's not doing well, and I think we need to help him. And so we're going to give him a medication under his skin, which is going to allow him to fall fast asleep. And once he's fast asleep and his body's in a more comfortable place, then I'm going to be able to talk you through everything. And from that point onwards, we can just slow down a little bit and I can answer all your questions. So there may be times where you need to prioritize the well-being of the animal,
Yeah.
get them to a place where they're sleeping. And once they're anesthetized, the pressure is off, to be honest. You've focused on the animal, they're unconscious, and their body is probably showing that they're in a lot better place. And it gives you just that 2 or 3 minutes to turn, focus on the family's well-being, their emotional needs, the support that they need, the time to talk it through. And even if you move quickly through the procedure and then, administering the pentobarbital and then they pass away, what you should be doing is just spending that extra time with them after the fact to talk them through that trauma.
Yeah.
Explain to them, what happened, what was the likely diagnosis? Why did they go downhill? Why did we have to make that decision so quickly? Acknowledge how hard it is to euthanize in a traumatic situation, because they have like a mixture of different types of grief that compound on each other, and the grief that you experience in a traumatic euthanasia or a rushed euthanasia is often 10 times worse than when you can plan for it. So,
they're often in shock.
They're in
so
shock.
a lot of what you're telling them isn't getting through, and they do often turn around and feel like they were rushed through things because you were just trying to do what was best for that pet, which was to be in another place, and to pass. So, yeah, I think you can still move through the actual euthanasia quickly. You can still kind of achieve that relief and peace for that pet, but that doesn't mean that you then don't have to kind of go through things. You just might do it after the fact, or you might call them the next day and you might say, look, yesterday was a lot. It was, thank you so much for trusting me and in leading you through that, because I know we made the right decision for Fluffy, who was in a really bad way. But I can appreciate that we did have to move through things quickly. And if you have questions, I wanted to take the time now to kind of talk you through things, or I wanted to send you some resources because I imagine you've got family members with questions. So I'm going to send you some, some end of life care resources to be able to go through and navigate, how you move forward. So I think you can still do a lot of good after the fact as well.
Yeah. So I think the key take home in an emergency situation is to try to maintain your emotional intelligence even in times of stress. Obviously, you'll have to act quickly at times to provide comfort to that animal. Comfort is anesthesia in many cases, even just getting them to the point where they're fast asleep and their body is calm and no longer in pain is enough to then, put that family's mind at ease that there's no more suffering, there's no more pain. Give them a few minutes to wrap their arms around them, hug them, cry, talk to them while they're still alive, and then say, now Fluffy needs us. We have to say goodbye. Like his body is ready, and you may need to sort of push them through it sooner rather than later. But that 2 minutes that you can provide to them to hold their baby one last time before they pass is going to be 2 minutes that they think about for the rest of their life. It's such a gift. So we just always have to have that in the back of our minds of what our families just might need from us, and can we make that happen? You might not be able to make it happen every single time, but the majority of emergency euthanasias, we still give families a little bit of time. Next question. Does Rest Your Paws have clinics around the country, or are all of your services provided at the client's house? So we actually have a team of 65 veterinarians across the country, located in all of the cities across Australia. And so we're an entirely mobile service. So all of our veterinarians go to your family's homes to help your pets in the comfort of home.
The next part of that question was, do you offer euthanasia services for avian and exotic patients? And do you have protocols, sedation and final injections for this? Yes, so we do. I would say in terms of like exotics, the main candidates we have are sort of rabbits, guinea pigs, rats, and ferrets. And we have our vets are sort of confident and competent in this, and we do have sedation protocols. It's also something, I guess, that recently did a talk at a exotic clinic, and then sort of we did some good work with them afterwards to kind of update and work on our sedation protocols. So it's a readily evolving space. I think we are of the standpoint that every pet deserves a good death. One of my proudest euthanasias was a sheep, and he had the best death of any sheep ever.
He had a ceremony with candles, and
he was a
yeah.
well-loved sheep.
Yeah.
So I don't think we will say no to anything, but if there's something that we're not as familiar with, then we're going to do the research for it. Yeah, you've had a couple of ducks.
I've had some pet ducks, which I will never forget. And I think that the key thing is treat every species with the exact same mindset. You know, let's keep them comfortable. Let's minimize stress. Let's make sure that everything we're doing is respectful to their body and their wishes. And so we approach all exotic species the same as we do cats and dogs. We provide subcutaneous sedation. Yeah. We allow them to fall asleep in their family's arms, and then we may either place an IV if it's possible, or we're all trained in advanced euthanasia techniques to be able to provide intra-organ or intraperitoneal in a comfortable and humane way as well. And so we really are moving away from gassing down, like where, you know, the AVMA guidelines are now saying we should never be performing euthanasia by gassing down species because of the stress that it causes and the discomfort in their lungs as they're breathing it in. So subcutaneous sedation prior to any manual restraint or anything that will cause discomfort. We do that with all exotic species as well.
Yeah. I guess feel free to reach out to us. We can always point you in the right direction as well if there are particular species that you're really kind of questioning about or want to know more about. We're happy to kind of direct you in the right direction to work out what's best for those patients. Just filtering through some more questions now.
We've got one here about aggressive dog euthanasias, and that is something that is, you know, surprisingly something that you can do very well in the home setting. You know, we've sort of mastered the art of providing oral pre-euthanasia sedation ahead of time, and so giving an animal who's at home where they're, you know, if they are aggressive and they're likely to become more reactive in a stressful situation, bringing them into a vet clinic actually heightens their anxiety and often that aggression to a point where you're playing catch up and you're ending up having to have all of your nurses restraining and fighting the animal, and they're, you know, it's a dangerous situation. Whereas in the home environment, we've often organized pre-euthanasia oral medications before the vet arrives, and we use, you know, if you have a look at our sedation guidelines, there's a whole section on oral sedation that you can use for aggressive pets when they come into the hospital. Dormicedin gel is an alpha-2 gel paste that you can just rub on their gums if they're anxious, and they'll just relax and get comfortable and often fall into a really light sleep there without even having to provide an injection first. And the families can do this for their own pets if they're a bit nippy. Everything to squirting Zolotil in their mouth and medetomidine, dexmedetomidine, ace-promazine, all your injectables can pretty much be given by squirting in the mouth. And so there really should never be a reason why your team has to put themselves at risk to put on a muzzle or put themselves in danger to try to get a catheter in an aggressive dog to be able to sedate, or even try to inject them and not get bitten. We have so many tools up our sleeve that once you learn about them will make your life a lot easier.
I think the caveat to that, though, is it is so much easier to sedate these highly anxious, highly aggressive, especially young animals who aren't necessarily aggressive. I think they're more mentally ill. You know, your 2-year-old border collies who have just started attacking the owners with no warning, getting them asleep, getting them their very highly active young minds to a point of anesthesia is much easier to do in the home. It is so much harder when they are already amped up in clinic. So I do think where possible, being able to reach out to a home provider that's confident with aggressive behavioral euthanasias, we will often enlist the help of the pet's GP to prescribe sort of medication to be taken the night before, the morning of, 2 hours before the appointment, and then the vet will arrive, give more oral sedation. These young, highly aggressive patients are anesthetized before the vet walks into the home. So
It's
that
very safe, very calm.
and as good as it can be for the pet. It's a behavioral euthanasias they're a sad affair in a whole nother way than the loss of a pet who's reached 15 lovely years. So, and there's a lot of complicated guilt that owners go through. So we need to be making it as gentle and as nice as possible. And especially for these patients, when you provide them sleep at the end, and the owners who have had to be keeping their distance because they can't trust them anymore, they get to actually come in and give their baby a cuddle before you put them to sleep and tell them how much they love them. That's special. That's a gift that you can give to someone, and you can't necessarily do that if you're trying to manually restrain them and get them down while they're in the clinic. So keep that in mind, I think, for your complicated behavioral euthanasia.
It's an interesting thought, thinking, it seems counterintuitive that a behavioral, very aggressive dog would be better done in a home environment, but it really is the case. And we work with a lot of clinics so that they don't even put to sleep behavior cases in their hospital anymore, because it takes that emotional burden off of the team, the nurses and the receptionists, making that sad somber vibe through the clinic when you've just had to battle a dog and put it to sleep, and it was awful for everyone. And being able to keep that out of the hospital altogether and making it kind of moving it away from your practice and having it be a nice experience that you're slightly more detached from is really healthy for the clinic.
We need time. Generally for aggressive euthanasias, we're there for a couple of hours. So we have the luxury of that time to give the owner and give to the pet.
Yeah, time and patience, and working with the animal to get them to sleep in the most peaceful and gentle way, causing the least amount of stress for the patient and the owner. And working with the animal. And they're difficult, but when we can do them at home, it's a much better experience.
They can be really rewarding too.
Yeah.
How can we book a lunch and learn? Can we do them via Zoom if we are in a busy clinic? Yes. So short answer is yes. We can do Zoom lunch and learn. So we have quite a few clinics where we've Zoomed in. We do a nice 1 hour Zoom and lunch and learn with them to get in touch with us. And I guess the beauty of organizing a personal lunch and learn and webinar for your clinic is we can then focus on the aspects of end-of-life care that you want to know most about. If you want to book with us, please just reach out at vets@restyourpaws.com.au. That's vets with an S at restyourpaws.com.au. And flick us an email and we can organize something. If you're nearby, we might be able to get to in person. Otherwise, we can definitely. We've had the practice now, so we can do online Zooms as well. Cool. All right. Other questions? What do we got? What do you want to do? Oh, I should have brought one up before I close that one. All right. I'm gonna go to just one of the most recent ones. Okay, that one's about behavioral euthanasia. I think we've already covered that one. That's awesome. Okay. How do you finish the euthanasia when people want to go over the expected time? How do you tell people it's time, or do you let them stay as long as they want? I think you will find that if you are spending the time with owners leading up to the euthanasia and you're really kind of explaining to them, you are giving them that really high quality time with their sleeping pet and giving them that physical closeness, you're also letting that pet experience sleep before dying. And you got to remember, what do people always say to us? They just want their pet to go in their sleep. So with our sedation, we're creating that beautiful artificial sleep. We're then letting them have that closeness and then pass away. I think I'm reluctant to use the word closure because you don't necessarily ever get closure following euthanasia, but you do get a sense of being involved in really processing what's going on. So I think when the pet does then pass, owners don't necessarily need to sit with them for as long afterwards, because I think they feel like they were more present and more in control as it happened, and they didn't go from being alive to then getting the injection and being suddenly dead. I think a lot of times people sit and have to like stay there to try and process, you know, what just happened. It happened so quickly.
They're in shock.
Yeah. So
and they're not coping, and we often just leave them in a room to
alone.
cry because they're so traumatized by it. I think we find like the majority of the time, as we sort of process and go through it with them slowly, talk them through it, give them time at every step of the way, that they come out the other end feeling that sense of acceptance, maybe more so than if it happens really quickly and they feel like they've missed opportunities to say goodbye in the way they want, or it all happened too soon, and then they tend to stay a lot longer.
We also, with our euthanasias, once we put them to sleep, we do sit and we do mementos with them, and you know, we do paw prints and we collect locks of fur, and we talk to them a little bit about, you know, how they're feeling, and or, you know, what was their pet's favorite thing to do. Like pet owners, once you've done the euthanasia and the anxiety comes down and they go, oh my God, that was so much better than I thought it was, like he passed away so peacefully. Often that's when the walls come down and they'll actually engage in conversation with you and kind of almost debrief with you a little bit. So maybe trying to provide them a little bit more of that, rather than just kind of leaving the room and awkwardly like waiting to chew them out. Not every time you are going to have people that just don't want to leave. We have people that don't want us to sort of take the pet and because we work with aftercare providers, and they're not ready for that next step. And sometimes we do end up staying there for quite a long period of time. But the vast majority, I think, are much more accepting of letting go because of how we've approached things initially.
Yeah. But I think that's where we may come to an end. We've just hit 8:30. Thank you to everyone for showing up tonight. Thank you for caring about this aspect of end-of-life care and our patients' well-being all the way till their final moments, and the families who love them, and being passionate about making this the best experience that it can possibly be. We're so proud that you're here, and we look forward to connecting with you again in the future. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Go get another glass.
Bye.
Bye.